Welcome back to another episode of the HigherUp podcast. I'm your host, Michael Smoke, and today we're joined by a guest. She has been one of my favorite content creators in the fitness space for a couple of years now, and she does a wonderful job of empowering people and letting them know just how simple it can be to get in the best shape of their life. Not only that, but the power that getting in physical shape can give them in every facet of their life. So, Miss Haley Cordova, this is long overdue, and thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This is such an honor. I am so excited right now.
Me too. You said something in a video that I really resonate with that I had never heard anybody else say. You said in a video once that you are addicted to feeling good. And I have used that phrase so many times in the reason I take care of myself. So I'm curious, what do your daily non-negotiables look like that keep you in that state of feeling good that you're addicted to?
Absolutely. I think with health things, there are your basics, right? Of you have your training, you have eating nutritiously, nutrient dense meals when you can control that, and staying super hydrated, all those kind of things. Sleep is obviously really important. I also think more specific non-negotiables come down to a lot of mindset things. So things like journaling, I'm really big on checklists, being super organized. Gratitude is a huge part of my life, and affirmations. If people are familiar with my content, I'm always posting on, my Instagram of affirmations in the morning. I am this, I deserve this, things like that.
I vote on those polls every morning.
Yay!
You know what, Haley, you're right. I am strong, smart, and kind.
You are. We all are. And I think having those little check-ins with myself and then also sharing that so that other people can have check-ins like that also really helps set my day with positive intention. And I think that the mental space that you create for yourself, first thing in the morning particularly, or just anytime throughout your day, it helps you navigate the physical part a lot easier.
Yeah. What does your daily organization look like? One of the things, truthfully, I struggle with is staying really tight and organized, being self-employed. So how do you structure your day with that to-do list, for example?
Absolutely. Well, my goals right now are going to be a little different just because I am in prep for my first bodybuilding competition. So I kind of split up my daily to-do lists with just kind of life things of client work that I have, that kind of stuff, school, if it's applicable at that time. And then I'll do my prep list of, okay, my posing, the gym, the training, getting my steps in, stuff like that. And what's I think really helpful too is I try to create those lists the night before, because I'm naturally kind of an anxious person. And so I think waking up with a plan really helps me feel guided versus waking up and feeling almost like I'm scrambling to, okay, let me look at my Google Calendar. Can I just get everything organized versus, okay, I know that I saw a creator reference kind of having like a closing shift to your day that I really liked, of setting your future self up to feel the most organized. And so when I'm going to bed, before I do that, I write down kind of what my to-do list is for the next day, split that up however makes the most sense. And then that way I wake up with a plan and I don't have to spend time in the morning thinking about what the plan is. You just kind of wake up with it. And then it takes away any of that negotiation or that mental doubt or anything of like what you need to be doing. It's just a very clear, set way of staying organized. And it definitely helps me a lot to kind of keep everything in check there.
I already know, because I run into this a lot, when people on the show share how tight and organized they are, people assume they've just always been this way. And, she's so type A, she's so organized, she's so jacked. Like, you have an insane physique, you're really fit, you're really organized, you wake up early, but you haven't always been this way. So I've seen your before and after. It's crazy. Like, your physique transformation is wild. Absolutely. What was the turning point or breaking point, if you will, for you to turn your life around, turn your health around, and become this more organized version of yourself?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you. That's very nice.
Of course.
I think, gosh, when it comes to who I am now, it feels like a total 180 of who I thought I would be. And growing up, I was always in sports. In high school, I did soccer, I did track, and I always kind of grew up in that athletic space. And during those times, I was what, type B, I guess, of just the most unorganized you could be. My parents would joke about, where's Haley's bed? Like things like that, of just, I didn't really care about my environment, about any of that kind of stuff. It wasn't a value of mine at the time, and that's fine. I got through it somehow, but I didn't really feel very proud of myself about anything particularly. I was just kind of going through the motions. And in high school, I struggled a lot with mental health and I was very depressed at that time. And I'm very grateful because when I look back on that, I can see how it was definitely an environment thing. I know for a lot of people, obviously, mental health can just be a brain chemistry thing. And my situation was a little bit different than that. But at that time, I lost a lot of joy for just basic things. And I think feeling that low of a low, it really forces you to reassess your values and to start from somewhere, you know? And so I think in high school, when things were just kind of all over the place and I didn't feel like I was guided or anything, I wasn't planning for any kind of future thing. It was really hard to feel motivated when you don't have a belief that it's going to really go anywhere because you don't think that you're going to get anywhere kind of thing. And so I think really hitting that rock bottom helped me feel grounded in a way of like, I need to do something. And that's when eventually I did end up quitting soccer because I just could not go to practice. I was just bedridden. And my mom could recognize, okay, we need to do something here. And that's where I started to, get involved in the gym and start training. And that process absolutely changed who I am as a person because I think it gave me something to look forward to. It gave me something to almost like an investment in a way of obviously there is delayed gratification. But I think when you're really depressed, you almost need something that is so long term and takes so long because it keeps you in the loop for that much longer, if that makes sense. Where I know, okay, if I can stick with this for 6 months or a year, like I could get to this completely different place. And when you're really doubting even the next couple of days, to view things that far out on like that stretched of a timeline, it made me feel focused in my everyday because it was for a bigger picture.
Wow, that's a great way to look at training and delayed gratification from a positive light. You said something really profound in one of your podcast episodes. It's impossible for things to remain this hard forever.
Mm.
And that simple sentence, I was listening to the episode and out loud I went, huh, I've never thought about it that way. And we all have struggles. We all go through hard times. I'm no stranger to that, but there are a lot of people probably now more than ever that struggle chronically with
Mm.
mental health and are in a state of what I don't know to call other than bondage in terms of their own mind. And it sounds like you dealt with that, and physical training was one avenue that set you free. And I think that perspective, not that you don't still struggle with it, but that perspective is such a powerful reframe on
Mhm.
if it's as shitty as it's ever been right now, there is hope yet in saying, well, it can't be this shitty forever, you know?
Yeah, it can only get better. And I think the gym was definitely a coping mechanism for me, but I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that pretty much everything is a coping mechanism in some regard. I mean, life is the most absurd, random thing ever to happen to any of us. I mean, nobody necessarily chose to experience this. We're kind of all just spawned into it. And so I think I can feel the contrast of what my coping mechanisms used to be, right? Where I was doing a lot of things like, and no shade if you, smoke or whatever, but I was doing a lot of things that didn't necessarily feel good to my body. And I wasn't doing it to feel good. I was doing it to just not be me, to not be in the headspace that I was at, kind of as an escapism sort of thing. And to feel that translation from like drugs, alcohol to gym as a coping mechanism, I think that was a big pivot for me because I think that with any kind of coping mechanism, I think it just kind of helps you stay grounded in, okay, I can feel that life is the craziest thing ever. What can I do to make me feel, like I'm still guided in some way? And that's what the gym really turned into for me. And that transition was really important, I think, just from a mental perspective to keep me here and to keep me focused and driven on something that wasn't just how I was feeling all the time and kind of focusing on a bigger picture in that way.
Yeah, I believe that every human being needs something in their day that pulls them out of their mind and into their body. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the whole goal of meditation is when you focus on the breath, you focus on your chest rising and falling. All they're doing is pulling you out of the mental and into the physiological space that is your body because that's the only way to get present. And I think physical training, like hard physical training, is not meditation because you're not relaxed, but it's not talked about enough as a powerful way to get out of your mind. Because like, I always say, like, it doesn't matter what you're going through. If you have a heavy ass barbell on your back or in your hands, the only thing you're thinking about is getting it up. Don't
Yeah.
let this crush me. And even if it's just for like 3 seconds,
Yeah.
for that moment. And I view cooking the same way too. It's like one of those things that when I'm in it and doing it, like I'm not thinking about anything else. And there is a lot of liberation and power in that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like maybe not the best comparison, but it's kind of like journaling in the way of you're just guiding your thoughts to specific things versus just letting them float around. Because I don't know what the statistic is, but it's something like we all think like thousands and thousands of thoughts a day. And so when you're just sitting with all of them, that can feel really overwhelming. But when they're directed towards something, even if that's just writing down, okay, today I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, whatever that is, or if it's with training, okay, I'm going to get this weight up because if I don't, I will get hurt kind of thing, right? So guiding your thoughts and having it be a little bit more focused on one thing, I think it feels a lot better because it's not so overwhelming with everything ever.
Yeah. What one of my least favorite things that people used to judge me for or minimize me for, specifically in the corporate world, because I was in a company dominated by older people, was when you have a good idea or a unique perspective or good foresight, a lot of times is discounted because of people's age, because they just haven't been on earth as long as someone else. And you're relatively young. You're 22, right?
I am, yes.
How did you gain the foresight that you have and the perspective that you have on things? Because a lot of your videos aren't just about, here's my full day of eating, here's my full day of training. You talk about ego and how self-centered it is to care what people think, and embodying the fact that we're all going to die. Things that a lot of people don't figure out till much later, you figured out much earlier. How did you get there so
Yeah.
early?
I think it's an unglamorous answer mainly because it's you go through things that kind of force you to have to think big and to think inwardly and to work through things. And I think I feel qualified in a way to discuss a lot of those topics because of the contrast, right? I felt kind of the total flip side of what it felt like to not take care of myself, to not speak to myself nicely, to not care about training or anything like that. And so I feel like through the process and through a lot of hard things, it forces you to adapt, it forces you to grow. And like you were saying, nothing can feel as hard as it does all the time because we're always growing and evolving. The conversation actually that got me to think of that was with my sister. We were talking about my anxiety. I'd gotten recently diagnosed, and I remember we were on the deck and I was telling her, it is impossible to feel like this forever. Like there's no way that I'm going to every single day have to deal with coping with this. And she was like, well, Haley, you're not going to have to know because we're going to learn tools and it's going to get easier to navigate and we're going to get through it. Like not every single day is going to feel that hard because you adapt with the challenge, you grow and evolve with the challenge. And obviously that doesn't make it easier, but it just makes you a stronger version of you experiencing the hard. And I think that in and of itself is easy. I think from the psychology perspective, I mean, going through a lot of hard things, it does force you to really look in on yourself and see where you can grow. And that's where I'm really grateful for social media because it kind of gave me a space to yap about a lot of my thoughts because I feel like I have so many. It's almost like a verbal journal in a way, or diary, if you will. And I think a lot of gym is going to be mental. And I think the easy part is, okay, here's how I trained today. Here's what I physically ate. But that's, again, maybe 10% of your day. How do you speak to yourself when you don't want to get up? Or how do you, still navigate eating nutrient dense meals when you don't feel like it, or you're having, a craving for something else or whatever that is? I think so much of it is mental. And I try to navigate social media and my life with being the person I needed. And a lot of the things I was struggling with, I didn't hear anybody talk about. I didn't, know anything about affirmations or gratitude. I thought all that kind of stuff was stupid and silly and for people who were just lucky and didn't deal with, any kind of mental anything. And so I try to use my space and myself as this, I don't want to say just something to help other people know that everybody feels that way and we can all navigate it if we're intentional about those little things, including the mental stuff and how we speak to ourselves and things like that.
Yeah, I believe that's a big reason your content works is because, and when I say works, I mean it goes viral, it takes off, you have a
Thank
large
you.
following, is not once have you mentioned, I did this to become a coach, I did this to gain internet fame.
Mhm.
You said video diary. And that's the way that I described my page at first. Was I called it a cathartic release of passion. Like, I have this
Mm.
thing I love that I want people to know about, and no one in my immediate life really gave a fuck about the AMCC in the brain and the power of doing hard things and fasting
Mhm.
and training hard and running marathons. And I was like, you know what? Rightfully so. I'm a little too into it for some people, but I need a space where I can go share.
Mhm.
And that is, I think, in essence, authenticity.
Mhm.
And what you shine a light on authentically is very important, is that you can make a change no matter how stuck you feel. Or, you alluded to the fact earlier that you were bedridden and your mom stepped in and said, there's there's something that's got to be done. And you you talk about stubbornness. Be stubborn. Be so fucking angry that you won't give up. And over time, you'll learn being stubborn is actually an incredibly exciting process. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think stubbornness to me, it's one of those things where to really admit defeat, I don't even understand what that means. If you feel like, oh, I've been defeated by, my mental health, what does that mean to you? Something that a goal that you have, and you've decided that it's just too hard. What are the other options for you, right? And I think there's so much satisfaction in knowing that something felt nearly impossible and then doing it anyways. And even something like a mental health transformation, if you will. I mean, I do still struggle like everybody does with that kind of stuff, but it's definitely a lot more tolerable now. And I think a big part of that did come down to, the gym and stuff like that. And I think with my depression being more focused on environment, I heard a lot of people talk about environment as like changing where you're living, right? So, and that always sucked to hear because I was living at home. I was fresh out of high school, kind of transitioning into college, didn't really know what I was doing. And I was like, great. So if it is an environment thing, I don't have any options here. Like, this sucks,
Yeah.
And I think instead it's been very gratifying and liberating to know that your environment is also something that you can optimize, meaning the body that you're living in, right? That's something that you are experiencing every single day, is your body as your environment there. And so changing that, and I don't just mean in changing the composition of it, but I mean the way that I was speaking to myself, all of the, facets of our body, your brain, all this kind of stuff. That is what really flipped that switch for me mentally, is being proud of the person that I was, being proud of the body that I carried, and really being proud of all that I poured into myself, and using that as the environment that I was optimizing, not necessarily location. Because yeah, that can totally help, but I do think we all have that kind of environment when it comes to your body. I mean, if you're watching, you have one, right? So it's like, that's the environment that you're in. How can we change that? And I never heard mental health come from that perspective. It was always just like, oh, move across the town, or, change this or break up with this one person. And those can absolutely have impacts on things, but that wasn't what it was for me. It was more who I was. I didn't have any positive evidence of doing hard things because I let myself be debilitated by them. I felt that I wanted to be different, but I didn't do anything about it. Right. And so to create that confidence, I know you talk a lot about having that evidence and the action alleviating anxiety and stuff like that. I think to create sort of this armoire of evidence of, oh, I wanted to, train today and I did that. Oh, I want to change this and I did show up. That's what makes you start to feel good about yourself, starts to make you feel like you have that purpose. And I think that, especially like I was saying with that longevity piece for training, because things do take forever, that's what gets you going for a very long time, because it's an investment in this longer period.
What, if you had to boil it down to a couple of things? There's somebody out there listening to this right now that says, one of two things, maybe both. I'm so relieved to hear that someone who once felt so stuck got unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's no way she feels as stuck as I do. I can't get the inertia, the motivation, the movement to change my life, or
Mm-hmm.
to even make the smallest change. Is there something that really sticks out in your mind when you put yourself back in that time of, you used a powerful phrase, I couldn't find the joy in anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that from people that are depressed or anxious, like they can't find the joy in anything. Is there something that you trace back in your life, a moment, a phrase, a quote, a person that allowed you to just put the first step out and take that first step and put one foot in front of the other?
Mm. You know, when you ask that, there's not one direct thing that comes to mind. But I think a lot of it was not waiting for specific emotions to come up in order to feel like I had to act on them. So it wasn't about that I just woke up and found joy in something else, because I'll be honest, no, I didn't do that. Right? A lot of things felt like shit, and they felt, I'm the first couple of days getting into the gym when I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I felt like everybody was staring at me. I didn't want to be there. Like that was not a joyous experience either. But a big part of my consistency, I think, is not relying on particular emotional circumstances to do things. Right? You can still do it tired. You can do it not feeling great. And yes, it's frustrating when you don't feel great, but part of the amazing parts of life is like you never know what you're going to be feeling one day. So the same way that it might feel like crap one day, tomorrow you could wake up and it actually felt okay. And those little glimmers of like, okay, this sucked, but like I kind of was okay with it. Maybe I can try going tomorrow. And then, oh, I had a great lift today. And yeah, it ebbs and flows in that way, but a big part of who I am really is just not depending on emotional things because it fluctuates so much, and that's normal. And giving yourself compassion that it's okay if you don't feel great. It's okay if you don't feel super motivated. That's not always going to be there. And I'm a very control-y person. And so I used to almost overanalyze that statement of controlling your controllables, where I assumed, okay, if I have slept well, eaten properly, all these things, I will have a good lift or I will feel good. And feeling frustrated when that wasn't the outcome because I was like, but I did everything right. What are you talking about? And one insight that my therapist gave me was, well, you're not a robot. Okay. Just because you do everything right ever, or you feel like you're setting yourself up, doesn't guarantee that you're going to feel great, but that's okay. And I think when I even say that, I feel my body relax of like, oh, it's okay. I'm allowed to feel angry. I'm allowed to feel stuck. I think a lot of that, when you are so resistant to what you are naturally feeling emotionally, it can cause a lot of that stagnation because you feel like you don't have permission to be otherwise, where it's like, oh my God, I'm feeling so angry today or so anxious today. Like, great, now I can't do anything. Instead, what would happen if you asked yourself, oh, is it okay that I actually feel anxious right now? What is that teaching me? Martha Beck is one of my favorite authors, and she talks a lot about anxiety, of almost thanking it because it's showing you, where your values are and what you're focused on. If I'm really anxious about my lift going well, that's showing me my value of, oh, I really care about the quality of my training. Can I use that to help me do better? Right? Can I use that to be, okay, that's keeping me focused and driven and thinking about this one thing and not being debilitated by that. I think a lot of it is appreciating all of the emotions and not sort of categorizing, good, bad. Oh, I feel happy today, so this is a great day. I appreciate the days that I feel happy and trained. That's great. They're not always like that, but that doesn't change anything about my consistency. I show up with whatever version is, present that day.
Yeah. I've thought a lot about that concept recently. I had a guest on the show, Peter Crone, who's big
Mm-hmm.
on people's mindsets, and all he does is help people break free from suffering. And that's even the title of the episode, How to Break Free from Suffering.
I
And what you
love that
said
episode.
earlier, thank you. What you said earlier is true. I think a lot of people, it's the resistance to feel a certain way
Mm-hmm.
that creates the problem. Peter says the issue isn't that you're anxious or sad. It's that you feel like you shouldn't be. And the gap
Yes.
between how you feel and how you think you should feel, that delta, he calls it, is the suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love the reframe, and you do a lot of this. You do a lot of great reframing.
Thank you.
Is the anxiety bad, or is it a signal? Is it your body trying to teach you something?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can view it from that standpoint, you said like you could feel your nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
relax. And I want more people to embody that anxiety, nervousness, depression, happiness. They're all emotions, and they're all
Mm-hmm.
trying to teach and tell us something. And
Yeah.
coming out of a hard time in my life, that has been a powerful reframe for me.
Absolutely. Well, I think anything should always hold shame. Anytime you're telling yourself I should be, I mean, I struggle with that with productivity, on a rest day of like, okay, I have an extra hour, I should be editing, I should be, responding to comments or doing all these things, that's always going to make you feel like crap because you're putting this intention that like you have to be doing those things to, do good or to be good or any of those things. And I think with any kind of emotion, it's such a human thing that we're able to feel them on such drastic ends of the stick. And so it's interesting how we're so resistant to them just because they're not what our preference is. And a lot of what keeps me going, even on like, Stairmaster sessions where I don't want to be there, it's like you can think about how much you don't like something while you do it anyways. You're allowed to do that. That's okay. You're a human who's doing a hard thing. If you notice hard emotions, that's okay. That should almost be validating. But yeah, you know what? I am pushing myself right now because I feel this way and not taking that as this sign to stop, because then it's like, okay, if you feel hard things and you're struggling and you're really anxious and you don't do something because of that, you have told your brain that yes, you do need to care about how you feel, because if it's bad then you'll stop. But now I know, and I have learned to trust myself through years of training. It's taken a lot of practice, but of, okay, I don't necessarily have to worry about how I feel mentally on a leg day, for example, because even if it isn't my preference, I still do it. I don't have evidence that when I'm struggling, I stop. So it's kind of like, okay, if you can take those emotions with you in a little backpack and take that and carry that with you while you crush your cardio, while you do your training, that is proving to yourself that maybe it doesn't actually matter that much and I can do anything with however I feel, kind of thing.
Beautifully put. What does gratitude look like to you? What does it mean to you? How do you practically implement that into your life?
That's a great question. I used to roll my eyes at gratitude actually a lot because
Me too.
I thought it was the woo woo, like, I am grateful for my family, like that. And that's just true. Like, if my
Not
family's
the
watching this, I
voice.
love you guys. But gratitude to me is more really taking me into the present moment and appreciating all that I have, kind of like a grounding thing. It's not necessarily even writing down, I am grateful for. It's just these little, being very, very attentive, right? I don't have a sore throat right now. Okay. I can go train if I want to because I have a fully able body. I'm not sick. I don't have any, paper cuts or anything like that. Those little things, like, they sound silly, but when you wish you took it, more seriously, grateful wise, when you have it. When I do have a sore throat, I know everybody has a situation where, like, damn, I was like taking all of that for granted when I didn't have that. And these little tiny wins, I think they definitely add up over time. And I use a lot of gratitude to really keep me going, I think, because it gives me a reason to do so, if that makes sense. Where when I'm thinking about, wow, I have access to a gym today, I have access to quality food, like, why wouldn't I capitalize off of that? These are all things that I have the resources for. I'm so privileged in that way. Like, why wouldn't I go and optimize what I can with these things? Not everybody even has the option. For me to sit there and complain about, my nutrition stuff, I have the option of doing that. For some
Yeah.
people, things like diet and their movement is fixed. It's a variable they don't have control over. And so for me to sit there and say, oh, I get to train, and changing have tos to get tos is a huge reframe that really helped me. It's why in a lot of my older videos with like what I eat in a day, is every single one, here's everything I got to eat today.
Yeah.
Because is it annoying to, steam your potatoes in the microwave? Maybe. But that's something that I get to do because I have accessibility to that. And I was talking with my boyfriend the other day, and we were talking about with prep and stuff, obviously your calories are lowered and it's going to get harder as it goes. That's kind of the whole nature of it. How cool is that? And he was saying, how lucky are we to feel entitled to more? And I was really thinking about that, where it was like something like a calorie deficit, to feel that discrepancy of, oh, I could crush another meal right now. The only reason I have that feeling is because I've experienced such a constant state of otherwise, of having, 5 meals a day, right? There are people who don't have that steady sort of state of income, if you will, input when it comes to nutrition. So to sit and to really think about, oh, I get to train today. I get to, hydrate how I want to. I get to control when I go to sleep. People who work night shift and stuff like that, they might not have that privilege. So taking time to really focus on all that I do have control of, I think, is the way that gratitude makes the most sense for me. And it is a way of implementing it that isn't as basic as like, I am grateful for, which can work too. but I feel like it's more of a in-person, like physical moment or present moment practice of that.
Yeah. Dr. Joe Dispenza has a great quote that I reference all the time. It's your personality creates your personal reality.
Mm-hmm.
And from a psychology perspective, they look at the personality as our thoughts, actions, and feelings. And so if that is true, our personality creates our personal reality, and your reality is depressed, it is sad, it is anxious, it is constantly in the negative in the past or future, because typically anxious or depressed states are living in an uncomfortable past, depression living in an uncertain future, or
Mm-hmm.
anxiety in an uncertain future, depression in an uncertain past. Then it makes sense if I can change my thoughts, change have tos to get tos, if I can change my actions, sedentary to active, and I can change my feelings, my self talk, my feelings about people, myself, and the world around me, then my reality will slowly, over time, start to shift. And I totally agree with that. And I notice and appreciate your intention about in your full day of eating videos, you say everything I got to eat today, because I had a professor in college, and oh my gosh, I'll never forget. Every time myself or one of my students, we had a very small program. It was a sales program. There was like 40 of us. So we all
Mm-hmm.
had the same classes. We all had the same professors. And Dr. Inks was known for this. When you would say, oh, Dr. Inks, I got to cut out early. I have to get to an interview, or I have to get to a lunch meeting with a company. He would say, do you have to, or do you get to?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that he was constantly reframing us. And I never understood it. And we always laughed it off. We always shook it off. But now I do that with people. Like, I find myself getting stressed about, oh, I've got to put out all this content, or I've got to create these modules for the coaching community. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? A year ago, you were talking about how this is all you want to be doing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally living in answered prayers right now. And it is an homage to the power of the reframe. And you do that really well. And you teach people how to do that really well. And it reminds me of something that just came up. You were talking about one of the biggest problems I think beginners in the gym face, which is I don't want to go to the gym when it's crowded. I don't want
Yes.
people looking at me. Don't want people staring at me. And you talked about in a video how you actually love a crowded gym because you feed off the energy. And I'm the
Mm-hmm.
exact same way. Like, I will intentionally wait to go to the gym until 5 p.m. Like, let me wait on that fucking machine,
Yes.
because I love seeing people grind it out. So can you talk a little bit about your perspective as you were once a beginner? You once mentioned, like, I didn't like people looking at me in the gym,
Mm-hmm.
and how you shifted towards, I love that energy and I feed off of it.
Absolutely. I think a lot of that comes from an insecurity and an intention that you have to look a certain way or have a certain amount of experience to be there. And at the end of the day, everyone pays the same ridiculous gym membership, however much that is, depending on where you go. It's a loan, probably, but everybody pays the same one. So there's no ranking of like, oh, they have so much muscle, so, they can be here, but I'm just starting out. And everybody knows that I'm just starting out. And it's so silly to me when I think about just as humans, we're always, I mean, there's obviously we have naturally a negativity bias there. We just assume that so many things are the bad thing, where it's like, oh, they're looking at me like ugh, they're judging my form. How do you know that they're not like, oh, I haven't seen that person? Like, I hope that they're staying consistent. Like, this must be a new journey for them. Like, we literally don't know that. And a big part of therapy, obviously, we learn a lot about, okay, you cannot control other people's thoughts. That is such a blessing and such a thing that you can take off your shoulders, because that'd be a lot of work if we could do that. And so, why are we so quick to assume that it's the negative thing? And I remember a specific realization for me was with the hyperextension machine, which, if you're not familiar, it's one where you're holding the weight and you're kind of like this, like arched downwards, and you're pulling it up. It's a glute exercise. And you pretty much just squeeze your butt cheeks together, and it's right in front of the squat racks at my gym. And that was a really great isolation movement that I wanted to use for so long. But every time I would go to try to use it, there would be like boys that I knew over there, or like really popular girls. And I was like, this is so, like, I cannot sit there and like I thought it was so embarrassing to like look like I was trying to grow my glutes, because I think I can reflect now that was projection of me feeling insecure that I had to grow them because I wasn't just born with like a BBL. So I was like, this is so embarrassing. And it's like, that's not embarrassing at all. But I remember for a long time, I avoided that. And it got to a point where I was so nervous to make action, to eat enough to grow, to train really hard, because I felt like other people were judging me for that, or that they had certain inputs on that. And I got to a point where I was like, I am literally letting other people have power over my progress right now, fuck that. I'm spending so much time here, but I'm not optimizing my time because I'm nervous about other people and they literally don't care. I mean, I can think about, yeah, there might be somebody you could look at and be like, ooh, their form's a little bit rough, but that's a passing thought and that's it. And I think the people who are truly there for the right reasons are never going to judge you. And if they are, okay, if someone is judging you, it's a silent thing that's happening. Why is that? How does that affect you really in any way? Unless they're physically going up to you and, saying something mean or whatever, and that's their problem. But I think it's so easy to assume that people want the worst for you. I think mainly because when you're coming from an insecure spot, you think that you're the worst, right? But it's saying, no, I am not afraid to be seen trying, and I'm going to go and crush this. And who's to say that there aren't people that are cheering you on? And you hear those stories of people who go consistently, and then you get that big guy that comes over to you and is like, hey man, you're crushing it up. And it's so gratifying. It's like, wow, there are people that are silently in support of what you're doing. And it's so easy to just jump to, no, they're not, but you don't know that. So the same way we don't know if it's good or bad, why not choose to assume that it's the good thing? I think I saw a quote one time where it was like, being overly negative is also delusional, right? Where I think people think that choosing to be optimistic and stuff is like, that's not, centered in real life. And you're not taking in the fact that it could be bad. No, I'm fully aware that people could be judging me, but also to just assume they are and not do anything, that's also being delusional, because it's kind of like a 50-50, could be good, could be bad, whatever. I'm going to go choose that it's going to be good and keep showing up for myself. And with that consistency, the irony in that is you do get stronger. You do feel more confident in yourself. And then that carries you to be in that space and to be sort of the person you needed in that way too.
I've never heard that. I have only heard of delusional confidence and optimism. I have never heard that to constantly assume the worst is also completely fucking delusional. And that is absolutely true. Like, you are an extra in somebody else's movie. Like, people don't actually give a fuck about you. And how freeing is that? Like, truly, how liberating is that to be? I still struggle with recording content in public.
Yep.
And it's so funny to me. I remember thinking, oh, when I build a following and I have proof and, I'm not going to give a fuck. But like, I've got a large following and it's been my career for 2 years. And I'm still like, I think I'm going to go record this video in my car. Or God forbid I record my workout at the gym. Oh,
it's hard.
It's still something. You do a better job of that than me.
Thanks.
That is still something I very much struggle with. And it's ultimately all of those actions I think are rooted in ego. And it's a protection device to keep us safe in a world that at one point in human history was very unsafe. And now that we live in such a safe world, a safe environment, abundant with food, resources, shelter, like the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy is met. And so our brain is like, how do I identify threats elsewhere? It's people looking at me, because that triggers a primal fear of being cast out of the village, judgment, all things that exist in our reptilian brain, but it's not fucking real. And a narrative I've really been pushing is, how dare I let this inflated version of myself get in the way of my potential self? Like, that's such a disservice and a reframe to, you are going to die one day. You mentioned in a podcast episode, I think the same one I referenced earlier, that when I was depressed and anxious, it's easy to fall into the mentality of, well, I'm going to die one day. What's the point? But you could also conversely say, I get one life in this physical body. I'm going to die one day. Why would I not completely maximize my potential in every fucking avenue, whether that's recording in the gym, posting your content, eating nutrient-dense food? I guess what I'm getting at is, like, everything in life is a reframe.
Absolutely. I mean, it really is. And I think with the death thing, I know it is quite grim, but when you're in a headspace like that, where you just want the pain to be over, it was almost comforting to me to be like, okay, I know that is there. That is the one inevitable we all have. No matter how you feel about it, what perspective you have, we're all going to die eventually. That's just what's going to happen. And to kind of be like, okay, I know that that's there. It sounds very dark, but in that dark mindset, I mean, that's just what helped me. Okay, I know that that's there for sure. So I can just try for the time now, because I at least know that I will still get to that. I don't want to say end goal, because that sounds really scary, but like, that is what's going to happen eventually. So I can at least take what I can do now to see what I can come up with, because I know that I'll sort of get there, if that makes sense. And I think especially with like the gratitude and a lot of those mindset shifts and affirmations and stuff, I know again, it does sound a little bit like, okay, that doesn't really work. But one thing I've really learned is a lot of it feels silly because you don't believe it. When I now, as somebody who's been practicing it for a while, look in the mirror and say like, I'm going to crush today. I have the power to, change my mind today or whatever. I feel empowered by that because I believe it. In the beginning, when you sit there and you're saying, I love myself, I'm happy right now, it feels silly because you don't believe that. And that just means you need to keep practicing it, because eventually that's where they become these empowering statements of like, I deserve to take up space. It's like, you know what? Hell yeah, I do love, the life that I've created, right? Because you start to believe that. So I think if you're somebody who is listening to a lot of that and you feel like, okay, yeah, but I'm not going to sit there and say I love my body, I hate how I look. Okay, you just don't believe that yet. Let's just keep doing that. And the more that you set that intention, okay, I really want to love the environment that I can create for myself, that's going to get you that positive momentum to train, to get your steps in, even little baby steps of drinking your water, getting a good night's sleep, like those little things. Because you're like, you know what? I do want to optimize my environment, right? And that's where that positive momentum can really, really carry you. And it kind of reminds me, I remember in like the most iconic book of all time, Atomic Habits. I'm sure if anybody is listening to this, I feel like that's where people start, like in a Barnes and Noble is with Atomic Habits. It goes from there. But one thing I remember reading in that book is they were saying how you're a lot more likely to repeat a behavior when it's satisfying. That was one of the laws, I believe, that James Clear had mentioned there. And I think that whole satisfaction thing is something that I use affirmations and gratitude for. It's kind of something to reveal my present purpose, right? So when I'm sitting there and saying, I had a really good lift today, I felt really strong today, or I did not want to do that and I did that. That's very satisfying to feel, okay, that sucked so bad and I still got through it. And so because I am using that gratitude, that affirmation of, or thinking about, okay, I was able to show up for myself today, that makes that situation satisfying, which continues the behavior. And so that's where a lot of, I think, consistency also comes from, is because I think a lot of being satisfied, it's really hard to feel in the present moment without that, right? It's something that I think you only kind of feel in the past tense when you have the perspective to say, oh, you know what? This podcast, it actually went okay. How am I to know if I'm satisfied with what we talk about today until after it's done and I'm reflecting on it, right? So that's where I try to carry some of those little things in with me with the present moment of, I feel good right now. I feel bad right now. I feel okay. I'm pushing through something. That's what makes the whole situation feel a lot more gratifying and satisfying. And I think mending that relationship with yourself is a surefire way to stay more consistent, because you're appreciating all that you're doing and showing up for yourself. And that's what keeps you dedicated to the process long term.
Yeah, well said. One of the cornerstones of my content when it comes to my belief about being a well-rounded person is, because that's what I think is all about. Like, physical fitness is just a pillar of becoming that maximized potential version of yourself. One of the other pillars I think are communication skills. And you do what I do sometimes on this show, which is what some people think is the hardest thing on earth, which is speaking by yourself into a microphone for 15 to 45 minutes with nobody else to bounce these ideas off of, with nobody to break the rhythm of conversation up with. And you do it really well. So
Thank you.
What did you do to, if anything, maybe it's God-given, to sharpen your articulation skills? Because you also do a good job of that in content. I think a telltale sign of a strong communicator is taking a complex concept and tying it to a simple analogy that can make it make sense to anybody, right? Like Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a child, you don't understand it well enough. So how did you get there? What did you do? Because a lot of people believe that is a fixed thing that they cannot improve on.
Yeah, I was kind of laughing when you were saying that, because the answer is just very silly. I talk to myself before content was a thing. I mean, when I go on walks with my dogs, I hope people know, like, I am fully having conversations with myself out loud. And what's great about our generation is, if people pass, not that it matters, but if people pass you on the street, they just assume that you're like in a meeting or something and you have AirPods. No, there's no AirPods. I'm fully just like on an episode of Oprah in my brain, like just going through and I talk to myself all the time. And I've always been that way. I did take I was a communications major in community college. So I took like public speaking and kind of the basic stuff there, but it didn't necessarily come naturally to me. But I think I just have so many thoughts that it's one of those things where it's like, why wouldn't I want to share that with people? And I've always, loved I mean, funny story, I wanted to start a podcast years and years and years ago. And I think I created like a burner account one when I was like 17. And I just talked for a little bit. I don't know what that was. It wasn't published, so nobody can find it, thank God. But just the idea of like talking to yourself. And I do always feel like I have something to share, whether that's good or bad. I do feel like I always have thoughts on that with whatever it is. And so I think content is easy because I'm not really thinking about it like you're talking to a bunch of people. I just think about it like, oh, I want to talk about this idea, period. Yeah, it's being recorded, sure, but that doesn't mean that, I mean, it is going out to other people, but it doesn't mean that it is. And I don't think about content in that way. I never get my phone out to think about like, let me post for thousands of people. It's just like, oh my God, usually my ideas come up when I'm walking with my dogs or I'm outside. I'm like, oh, that's a good analogy. Let me like write that down in my notes app and then I'll go and bring it up in a video. And I think even from like a social media perspective, I think that does help a lot with how you do in social media because you're doing it without an expectation. And that's what creates people to gravitate towards you in a very authentic way, very natural way, because it doesn't feel like, hey guys, I think that maybe even just that saying, hey guys,
Oh,
can be a stressful thing because then it's like, I am talking to people right now
yeah.
versus like, no, I'm just going to document myself and that's just what that is. And then post it. And then whoever sees it, sees it. And that's what got me a lot of consistency with content, which over time, of course, compounds onto itself and creates a lot of videos for people to, join in on. But I don't think any of it was with this intention of like, I'm going to go famous right now. I'm going to get viral right now. The irony is, especially with TikTok, I promise any silly, stupid idea that you think of on the fly, that's what's going to make you do viral versus things that are very thought out. And like,
100%.
well, I mean, I posted a video I think like last week. I wasn't even good. I was really upset because I tried doing frog pumps
That was on
and
my For You page.
yeah. First of all,
You're
I have
like
many thoughts on that.
sobbing.
I was having a hard day, guys. And that was just my tipping point. Okay. I had no expectation of that. And of course, that's the video that gets a bunch of traction. It's like, great. And the majority of people are mad at that video because I was crying, which I have my own thoughts on. Why are we mad at people expressing themselves emotionally? I feel like that's coming. Anyways, but my
Yeah.
point being, the things you don't plan out and you just do to do it, and you're thinking about just documenting your human experience, that's what usually gets stuff anyways, versus like sitting down, I need to make sure that this is perfectly like articulated. That's crafted. People don't want crafted stuff. They want just people to connect with.
Yeah, God, I think people that are made uncomfortable by people expressing emotion, whether it's positive or negative, are weak. Like that's why I just chimed. I was like, weak. Those are weak people projecting, and that's what you see online 9.9 times out of 10 is like any negative comment. If you're not being an asshole and you're coming from a place of compassion and kindness, and it's negatively received, it's almost always projection, almost
Oh
always.
yeah.
And you pointed out something that honestly, in all of my communication tip content, I've never alluded to, but I also do all the time, is talk. I talk to myself all day, all
Oh
out
yeah.
loud, like not inside my own head, like all day out loud. And I remember, I probably picked that up from my dad because I remember when I was a little kid, like him walking by me, going like whispering to himself. I'm like, is he on the phone? But he was
Yeah.
just having. I go, what? And he goes, nothing. And he was just talking to himself. And my dad was also an incredibly eloquent communicator. So
There you go.
I think the secret is that we're just always practicing. And there was
Yes.
also a golden nugget you just gave about content, which is the best videos are stream of consciousness. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't. Maybe you're the same way. I don't know. I don't have a strategy. I don't have drafts accumulated on my content for the next 30 days where I want to take the business. It's
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I was used to at one point, just saying out loud angrily to myself in the car. The only difference between me now and me 3 years ago is I just pick up the phone and say it out loud. Not to anybody, but it's my journal entry for the day. And
Yep.
those videos versus the ones where I'm like on my whiteboard over here trying to be value based, those are the ones that always fucking crank. And I'm like, naturally. The 16-second video about the thing I'm mad about today has 8 million views, but
Uh-huh.
me trying to help people has 10,000.
Which is both frustrating and exciting.
Yeah.
Frustrating because then you put a video. There's videos that I'm like, I'm really proud of this right now. Like, this better get some traction, and then it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But it's also exciting because it's kind of proof too that, oh, I don't have to put as much thought necessarily in order to connect with people. and be, a video of value in some way. And especially with projection, it's interesting that you bring that up because I think a lot of content stuff specifically comes from projection on a personal where, I know you're mentioning filming in your car or filming at the gym. It's so embarrassing to do that. That is projection from yourself, assuming that other people are judging you the way that you are judging you. So one thing that I struggle with is even filming upstairs when my family's around or if my boyfriend's there. I'm always like,
Oh, me
hey, do you
too.
care if I, film a video right now? Like, hey, I'm going to talk. So just like leave for a second, and feeling that angst. And that's assuming that they're judging me like that. And majority of the time they're not. They don't really care. It's assuming that they care about something like what I say in a video as much as I do. And it's very comforting to remember that people have different values. And, if your value that day is filming a workout in the gym, like that's okay. And if somebody doesn't align with that, yeah, they might judge you. But again, that's usually a silent thing. It doesn't immediately impact you. And so get what you need to get done, right? Get your content, get your tripod out and get that, going. And then when you leave the gym, usually when I look back at those videos that I filmed there, I'm not thinking about what other people were looking at me. I'm like, oh, great angle. This looks great. I'm so glad that I did this. Like I don't see other people's thoughts in the cool video that I got, So a lot of it is just embracing the discomfort and feeling it's like a warm back of your neck feeling of like when I'm filming in front of my mom and I'm like, okay, she's definitely like thinking about what I'm saying right now. And then I watch it back and I'm like, that just wasn't real. That was invisible. Like there's literally no proof that anybody was thinking anything besides encouragement, right? That positive delusion of like, she could have been like, I'm so proud of my daughter right now. I'm so happy that she's doing something that she's really excited about. So a lot of it is just doing it and not needing other people's approval to do it because that approval is going to be based on their values and they might not be yours. And that's okay.
Yeah, it's amazing and a good example of like your brain is not always your friend. Your
Yeah.
thoughts are not always you, and you need to be aware of that and step outside of the thoughts themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't even touched on it yet, but I do want to touch on it, and it's the facet of your training. Like you do have a great physique, you have a lot of muscular development, and I think girls struggle profoundly with this. Guys too, they struggle with fat gain, bulking, disordered eating,
Mm-hmm.
and you said in a video your fear of gaining weight is deterring you from making long-term progress. So as a girl, as someone who I think culturally women feel pressure to be tiny or
Yep.
small, how did you combat against that and develop this consistent, structured strength training routine to build muscle and build a physique?
Yeah. That is definitely an answer that took a long time and it took periods where I fully wouldn't do it. I would be the kind of person that would bulk for a day and then the next day I'm like, I don't really feel like doing that. It's kind of scary. And then I would just stop doing it. Right. And again, with that frustration, that stubbornness, it was like, okay, at the end of the day, I would like my glutes to grow. And that's where I think a lot of just science alleviates anxiety because when you realize that, okay, if I want my glutes to grow, for example, I'm going to have to overall put on some mass. You cannot gain 100% pure muscle. If that was the case, like everybody would just do that, right? So when I got realistic with myself, okay, this is what my end goal is. Even if it's something, like big glutes, it can be whatever it is. It's kind of a, basic answer there, but, whatever. And thinking, okay, this is going to require overall a very slow, gradual gain. That way, when I was realistic with myself and I saw that reflected, I was validated and I wasn't, put in fear. Versus in times where I was assuming that I can grow my glutes only there and then everywhere else is just bad. That made me feel like shit when I would look in the mirror. But when you're actually realistic with it and you're saying, oh, I'm gaining weight. Okay, I'm losing definition. This is awesome because I'm getting closer to my end goal. And I think especially with women, there is a lot of pressure to be small, which I don't know who the hell created that, but whoever they are, like whatever. But I think a lot of it is just really removing yourself from weight itself. Because at the end of the day, weight, specifically the number, does not matter. I view weight, whether it's, accurate or not, as just gravity. I think about, again, with gratitude, we're going to get back into woo woo, but like I truly value the world and my life and the people in my life that I love. And so I view gravity as the earth pulling me into it. So if my weight is 150, okay, that's how much I'm being pulled here. How cool is that? Pulling me closer to two people I love. If it's going up, going down, whatever, whatever your weight is doesn't mean you're not taking care of yourself. It doesn't mean that you're not still showing up in the gym and training. And I think it came from a lot of destigmatizing some of that to say, okay, my weight went up. I must not be taking care of myself. Or are you just taking care of yourself in a different goal? Because again, not everybody has the same goals, right? And a lot of that comes with how you're raised. My mom grew up in kind of that like almond mom sort of thing where a lot of, the skinny this and skinny that. And that can be uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, you know what your goals are. You know when you make goals that are clear, what the steps are, and you nail it. And at the end of the day, when you're really goal driven, when you see the fluctuations, it should excite you because you know you're getting closer to it versus, just assuming that you can get there and be comfortable all the time because you're not going to be comfortable. And so I almost take my discomfort as a sign that like, okay, I'm doing what I need to do in the right way, right? Even first stage, I had to be growing in order to start prep. And so to really push a lot of food for a significant amount of time, especially close to summer, uncomfortable, sucked sometimes, but that made me excited about it because I was like, wow, I'm going to be growing so much, if not just physically, mentally too, because I'm forcing myself to adapt to a new set of circumstances.
Yeah, I view bulking like investing. A lot of people,
Yes.
it's hard to take that money out of your paycheck and contribute it to the 401k or the market. You're like, I'd rather have that 100, 500, 600, $1,000 a month to go spend on a thing I want. But I know future me will thank me for doing that. And that's how I
Yes.
had to view bulking. And now, like the time passed anyway, and I built my physique to a point that I'm proud of, but it was through a point where I looked in the mirror and was like, oof, we're pushing 2 bills now. I'm a little thick, but I feel good. I feel strong. And the trade-off as a
Yep.
natural lifter is like when you're in a surplus, you're always kind of stoked to go to the gym because you know you're going to crush it. The
Hmm.
trade-off of being lean and liking the way you look is that a lot of times your workouts aren't as good
Yeah.
and overload's harder
Hmm.
and your motivation's a little lower. And so when I shift my perspective based on the goal, to your point of, well, now I feel strong, I'm resting better, my testosterone's higher on my blood work. Like, I don't look as good. I look bigger with clothes on, maybe not with a shirt off. It's all these different reframes. Again, always comes back to the reframe that allow you to make that long term investment in your physique. That when you get to the end goal and someone says, a guy in the gym yesterday was like, dude, you're way bigger in person. Like, he wouldn't have said that if I hadn't done like a 9-month
Yep.
bulk that made me super uncomfortable with how I looked at times. But I'm
Absolutely.
glad I did it. And it really is something that if you want to get where a lot of people can't go, you got to do what a lot of people ain't willing to do. And that's
Absolutely.
maybe get fluffy for a season
Yeah.
and be consistent, which Haley, you do this really well. You highlight this plenty for my girly pops out there, but also for my
Yes.
dudes. Going into the gym and doing an Instagram workout you found that day is not going to yield the best progress. Like, you're going to see Haley doing hip thrusts or RDLs like every week, trying to
Hmm.
get stronger because that's what builds muscle, right? Like, can we
Yeah.
just talk about that for a moment? Progressive
Yeah.
overload.
For sure. I mean, honestly, and really quick, just you had a lot of points there with there's opportunity cost to anything, right? Like you were saying, when you're bulking, you might feel uncomfortable, but you feel really strong. When you're, in the other direction, you might not have as much strength, but you might like how you look better. That's just life. Is there's always going to be good and bad things to everything. Choosing to focus on the positives, right? And really affirm yourself. Okay, but I feel really good right now. So who the fuck cares if I'm a little bit fluffier? But a lot of it comes down to just trusting yourself. I trust myself to commit to the process regardless, even if I'm uncomfortable right now. And what that sort of whole conversation reminded me of is one of my favorite quotes, and it's describing how I think it's cows or bulls. I want to say it's bulls react with storms. And it's the bull that faces the storm gets through it faster than the ones that run away from it. They're in it longer. And so the irony is, if you're really goal driven, being really committed and consistent will get you there faster and you'll have a smaller frame of discomfort than if you're just kind of doing it and then changing your mind and then, okay, I'm going to eat to grow now. And then I was just in that sort of phase for months versus if I had just said, okay, fuck this. I'm going to take 5 months, commit to this goal, and then I will pivot. That's how you are able to escape, if you will, that period of time if you're actually staying consistent with it. And like you mentioned with progressive overload, I mean, you have to be nailing the basics and getting that consistency in order to do that and not using your human brain of like, yeah, but that didn't really feel good today, maybe I should switch it up, and saying respectfully, fuck you, we're going to be doing this until we nail it and progress through it, and that's how we're going to make progress over time.
Yeah, well said. that consistency, the only way out is through. Something Matt Frazier, a CrossFit athlete, always writes the acronym of the only way out is through. And if you just move through the belly fat, that uncomfortable feeling you get right when the abs start to get blurred, and just push through, you're like, holy fuck, I put 50 pounds on my squat, or my linear progression's going up every single week in the
Yeah.
gym. And then you're closer to your end goal. And
Yeah.
it's just an homage to that 90% of success can be boiled down to doing the obvious thing for an extraordinary period of time. That's like almost anything worth having in life, is you've got to do the boring work, and you've got to do it longer than is comfortable or expected of most.
Absolutely. Well, and also, it's also to remember that progress is not just physical. That's the one that we know, and we are really good at assigning how we feel about to it because you can physically see it. But I know you talk a lot about just the benefits of resistance training for longevity. And so I think that's also a comforting thought. I know for a lot of my audience, they need to gain weight for health reasons, right? So it's like, okay, if you know that you need to do this in order to live a healthy life, you need to do that no matter how you feel about that. That's not something that's your choice or your option, right? So if you're feeling a little bit physically uncomfortable, again, that's okay. You're allowed to feel that way, but you're doing something to invest into your future self and to promote a long life. So it's not just about the physical progress you make. That's great. And I appreciate it when I can see it, right? But it's also saying, okay, thinking about all the ways that I'm mentally progressing. I've gotten through a lot of hard things when it comes to changing my physique. That's going to do something to you mentally and emotionally as a person, make you more resilient of a person. So it's thinking about progress in an umbrella of different ways of, yes, there is physical, but there's also so many other reasons to do it. And that way it's like, I don't really need to feel so focused on the definition I have, because for some people I can understand how that can get toxic as well. But it's like, well, the good thing is there's so many other reasons to do it. When you focus less on aesthetics, it's interesting. They usually just come on their own because you're just focusing on consistency and not focusing on like fluctuations that are just a normal human thing.
Yeah. Chase health, chase consistency, and the aesthetics typically follow suit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Haley, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and let me ask you these questions. Like I said in the beginning, this is long overdue. I'm glad we finally got to do it. Where can the people find you, find the podcast, and your socials?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This has been a dream. I'm so excited about it. For my socials, I'm on Instagram. Fueled by Fitness is my handle for TikTok and Instagram. I'm on YouTube, Haley Cordova. And then for the podcast that you had mentioned is Haleyness. So that's actually, if you're curious, a spin on the word haleness, which haleness means a robust state of good health. So it's kind of my spin on health. I was so grateful when I looked up health synonyms and I saw haleness. I was like, this is literally perfect. It was perfect. So Haleyness is my podcast. It's on Spotify and Apple. I am going for my first competition I'd mentioned later this year. So a lot of that journey and stuff is on my YouTube and on my social media as well. But I really seriously appreciate you and what you do for other people. I know a lot of people can say the same thing. And I just feel really grateful for the opportunity and just everything. So thank you.
The pleasure is all mine. Guys, if you liked the episode, make sure to rate it on Spotify. If you're on Spotify, if you're on YouTube, make sure to drop a comment. Let us know what you thought and subscribe to the channel so we can get the message to more people. And, one thing we do, I almost forgot, is I have a little tradition on the show. Do you have your Apple Watch on right now?
I do.
Okay,
I'm so
we
scared.
we do a step check. It's a tradition.
Okay, this is not fair because
We're gonna do it. It doesn't matter where you're at. You're not gonna like. I'm not
yes,
gonna like where I'm at
please.
either. All right, it's 11:34 Eastern Standard Time, and I am at 2,270.
Okay, I feel better. I'm at 1,300. I thought you were gonna have like 12,000, and I was about to freak out.
No, I slept in a little bit today, but
too.
either way, drop your step checks in the comments per usual, and we will see you guys in the next episode.
Yay!